very hectic morning. We began with a wonderful conversation with Ray. I'm not going to say her last name because I'm probably going to massacre it. I think, but it's Kawasaki I believe. I could be wrong, but more importantly, she's the Secretary General of UNICEF, which is a global organization out of Japan, who gave us a wonderful overview of the possibilities of what would happen if we could join and participate in the training they're doing to do satellites. They believe and practice the philosophy that everybody should have access to space, and they've been busily doing that. And there are 27 countries, I believe, in Africa that are active in that space. We also heard from one of the experts that focuses on a new project. There's still room to be in that project if you're just joining us. It's an IoT project. They're developing an IoT satellite constellation project. So if you are interested in constellation design and participation, you can still participate either with your own satellite, or if you don't, in a university or institution or NGO that can't afford to build a satellite, you can also support by or participate by being involved in the sensors, because sensors might be more affordable for you. You also, I think, have a program with ground satellites, so different elements in which you can learn to be a part of a satellite, a constellation project. It's an IoT mission. The mission is to enable people who are participating to learn more about how the sensor systems works and all the things that go along with ensuring that there's security and what do you call the word? When it's accurate, anyway, the accuracy, etc., of the system. We ended up our morning with a conversation. We also talked about space for climate and agriculture. That was a very rich conversation, a lot of good learning there, and ended up with a conversation on the issue of satellites and how are we going to ensure that we have industry partnerships to do satellites across Africa. That went on for very long, hence why we had lunch late, because people were like very excited about the topic. So we let them kind of go. So with that said, we have a conversation now, or actually here, Lightning Talks. We have some speakers. First up, I think I saw Eldridge first join, so I'm going to let Eldridge go first. And then we'll see, I think Mishak was here too, and then Timothy, you came in third, so we're going to go ahead and take it in that order. No, I think Aristide was next, and then Timothy, you came in last. So Eldridge DeMela, could you introduce yourself and go ahead? Do you need to share slides?
No slides. So hello everyone. Very happy to be here today. Eldridge Tomelo. So I'm originally from Angola. I've been working in the space industry for more than 10 years now. I'm an space entrepreneur, so I have my own space company. At the moment, I'm currently building a satellite constellation, so I should be launching my first satellites by the beginning of next year for positioning, navigation, and timing. And very happy to be here with everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces.
Right. So the format of this is a lightning talk. So you don't have to like wait for my questions. If you have something to present, you can go ahead and present. If you have slides, I can give you access to the slides. And if you want to take questions, you can wait around. We want to get through everybody first, and then we can come back and take questions. So everybody put their cards on the table, so to speak. So Eldridge, what would you like to share about your vision, your satellite? What would you like to people to know, and what kind of partnerships are you looking for? Because this conversation today is really about how do we create partnerships across Africa. The floor is yours.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to pull up my slide. If you give me 1 second, I should have that up and running. Perfect. So then I'm just going to share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah. So very quickly, the name of my company is called SharpNav, and I'm in the business of providing precise navigation and timing, whatever the conditions. The motivations for starting this company is mainly that if we look now into the global, the GNSS, which is the Global Navigation Satellite System, this is a bit of a legacy system, and it has a lot of issues. So first of all, there is a lot of jamming and spoofing activities that has been happening for the past few years. And this is due to many different reasons, but also there is the limitations for indoor penetration, and which is actually a very big market which I'm targeting with my company. So as a part of the motivation, my company is a Finnish company. I live in Finland. And in terms of jamming and spoofing, Finland has actually been targeted quite a lot in the last few years, and mainly due to the geopolitical change, the scenario. So my focus is to provide a system that is independent, that's able to provide commercial PNT, and should be able to guarantee that commercial infrastructures will always be operational, no matter the condition. So for that to happen, what I'm doing then is I'm building this satellite constellation. I'm taking a three-phased approach. So my plan is to launch my very first 2 to 6 satellites already starting next year. So by February next year, I'll have 2 satellites in space, and then by end of next year, I'll have 6 satellites in space. But the end goal is to have 300 satellites in space for PNT, and that's where we are right now. So the company is currently being incubated by the European Space Agency Business Incubation Center, so ISABIC. We are funded by ISABIC and also funded by the Finnish government. We are currently raising our pre-seed round, so roughly about 5 million euros. We are now on track with about 2 million euros, but there is still room for people who want to jump in and invest for the remaining 3 million euros, which we are hoping to close already, I would say, latest by September this year. In terms of how to collaborate with Africa, there's many ways to collaborate with Africa. First of all is that Africa is really a fertile place with a lot of talent, a lot of young people, a lot of great ideas. And that's the first collaboration venue that I'm trying to look for. So I'm searching for talent, people who have skills, or people who want to build their skills, of course, then I'm also willing to support. That's the first pillar. The second pillar, of course, is investment. I'm looking for partnerships with investors in Africa that would like to have a stake at this magnificent endeavor. And then lastly, I'm looking for government cooperations. The important thing about commercial PNT is that it's not owned by a state. If we look now, if you have been following up with the news, with the sanctions going around, for example, in Brazil, a lot of the discussions in the mainstream media for the past few days has been that there is a risk that they will lose access to GPS because of the growing tensions between the current Brazilian government and the current American government. And that's understandable. So that's politics. And we are not into politics. We are into providing a commercial service, a commercial product. And this is what I want to leave here, is that we want to partner with governments and provide this bridge, this commercial bridge, where you are sort of in a way independent from other state-owned systems. And this is where I would also like to collaborate with nations in Africa. So this is my very short presentation, and I'm open if anyone has any questions or any points to add.
Yes. Okay. So if you have a question in your audience, please type it in the chat and we'll come back to that question. I'm going to let the next speaker. Yes, the next speaker will speak as a panel, is a lightning talk. So we don't want to lose the energy of a lightning talk. The only face I see visible is Timothy. So I'm going to bring you up next. If you ready to speak, speakers, please turn on your camera. I'm not seeing you, so I cannot continue to press show yourself and you're not showing yourself. So let us add Timothy to this conversation. Do you have some slides you want to share?
Yeah, sure.
So the opening message is that there is an African-owned / Finnish company that is out there in what stage 2 funding. They have been supported. This is fantastic news. That means we have the talent to compete internationally. So we know this is evidence that Africa has the talent to compete internationally. What they need now is to figure out how can we maybe, sell some services to him in terms of maybe some skills he needs to buy, some sub skills he needs to buy. Maybe he can partner with people in that event. So, Timothy, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sure. Can you see my slides?
Yes, I can see your slides.
Oh, okay. So my name is Timothy Kwamba. I'm from Zimbabwe. I've been promoting space in Zimbabwe since 2014. I'm one of the pioneers of space education in Zimbabwe. So I started in 2014. Okay, maybe let me put in the presentation more. So I started in 2014. This was my first World Space Week in Zimbabwe, in which I taught students more about space, how people live in space. Then also I've participated in some television shows promoting space in Zimbabwe. This was the national television in 2016. And also I had one of the programs which I recorded in 2022, which is Influential Women in Africa, which I profiled influential women in Africa, about 8 episodes. It is available on YouTube. Also, I've organized some space quiz in Zimbabwe. And also in 2023, we had also some public awareness around schools. Then also here in Rwanda, 2025, we can actually see also promoting space education. So this is one of the awards that I was given by the World Space Week since I've promoted space for the past 10 years. So this to another World Space Week quiz, which I promoted in Zimbabwe. So one of the most interesting things that I've been working on is now fostering space education through inspiring dreams. So I've written a book that shares about my space dream of taking Zimbabwe to space, which the dream took 8 years. So I share the experiences of the challenges that I face at each and every stage in life, professionally, educationally. So this is one of the books that those people that are really interested to get into space, or some who are really interested in space, or who want to persevere to realize their dreams. It is a book that you can actually get on Amazon. So this is the book, and this some of the information that you can get from the book. Then I'm also writing a kids book about space. This is a book that is mainly focusing on about space stories, in which I share the space stories in an African setting. Like in this case, this is in Zimbabwe, in a rural setting in Zimbabwe, such that I'm trying to show that space is for all people, and space is not far away from the rural area. So in this rural area, I create some characters in which they'll be developing the community using space. So different aspects in which they'll be discussing. This book is mainly to show the skills that are required in space, the careers that are in space, and also to bridge that gap that in order for space to develop in Africa, there's also need for the traditional leaders to also participate in those products, in those also in those projects. So this book also touches in these aspects of space engineering, GIS, astronomy, space tourism, and space climate and sustainability. So I think I'm going to launch this book in about, I think during the World Space Week in October. So this is what some of the things in the book, like for example, Chris Hadfield played the guitar in the International Space Station Expedition 35. So in the book, I also have got some chapter in which I try to show the issue of weightlessness, how people live in space, but also you see he's playing a traditional instrument called bira, like in Zimbabwe. But now I'm showing it in the book, also trying to bring that African flavor. Then looking at also look at aspects like, for example, there's this traditional oven that is used to bake bread, but now I also have it in analogy to the thermal vacuum chamber. Both of what almost the same principles. So you find that in the raw setting, the grandmother is baking the bread and some other things. So, and they discuss about that. They discuss about the chamber vacuum chamber and the skills that are required for you to do chamber vacuum chamber. Trying to bring out. So I'm trying to bridge the traditional and the technology in this kids book. So why storytelling matters? You find that it makes the abstract science relatable, bridges the imagination and learning, and demystifies space. And now this is an important aspect in which I'm looking at speculative fiction in the African context, which leverages local languages, settings like, for example, in this case, this book, my setting is currently in Zimbabwe in a raw area, but now I can actually change it and put it, let's say, yeah, in Rwanda, I can change it and put it in the setting of Rwanda, and the Kigali, the names I change, so that when the kids read this book, it will be relatable to them. So you find that this kind of stories will actually go a long way in trying to create space education in Africa. So, but I think some of the things that we also need to look at is the issue of looking at skills-based space education in Africa, in which we need to have some hands-on of some different, let's say, different startups that are creating some CubeSats, but issue of collaboration where these CubeSats can also be available to teach students in schools, so that they can have that practical aspect, and also some simulation tools which are open source, which can also be used in terms of for learning space, so that they can really appreciate it better. There are some other tools that I've just listed that are open. Some are free, and some are for educational. Where if a student has got an ID, they can be able to get a license like MATLAB, Celestia Fusion, and some other QGIS, which I've listed. One of the most important things that I've realized during my space education or my space education experience is that now when I teach students about orbits, I use some of these tools like STK to show them exactly how the satellite moves. Like for this instance, I teach them about the geostationary satellites. You can see it is stationary. They can really appreciate it when they are seeing this kind of simulations, and they are explaining to them. They see the low Earth orbit. They appreciate much better than just putting the slides and the pictures. So this kind of visualization, in which you put the simulation, the videos, really helps the students to understand the the issue of space. Then another thing, you find that there are some other low-cost solutions in which, like, for example, if you want to treat satellite operations, you can build this kind of antennas, the quad field antenna with local variable materials, which is very cheap. Then we've got some other instruments to actually measure the antennas, like the vector network analyzer, which costs $50, but the actual vector analyzer costs a lot of money. So this kind of tools now really helps the students to teach them the practical aspects, not to just teach them the theory, but at least for them to see, if they want to see the Smith chart, they measure the antenna, they see again, these kind of tools are very helpful. Like, for example, those kind of tools, we've used them to download the NOAA images. You see, this was in Zimbabwe. We downloaded the NOAA images, this kind of antennas. So these are very useful. They teach the students the practical aspect of actually appreciating space more and getting more understanding. So I think for now, I would stop here. And some other slides, I think we can talk in the discussion.
All right, thank you so much. All right, Mishak, I see you've undone your microphone. Here you are. And so there you are. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Claire. And I really appreciate the colleagues who have spoken previously. I think we have worked with Eldridge and Timothy. They are really amazing people to interact with, and I'm happy that we are in this session together. I mean, these are pioneers of the space industry, and I've had opportunity, to work with them in different programs. So my name is Mishak, and most people probably know me because of the African Space Program, which I've been working to institutionalize, and we are so happy that we got operational. We got the institution operational this year in April, and now the African Space Agency is fully operational to implement what we call the African Space Policy and the strategy. But beyond that, I've been also working on privately on applications of on the upstream, which is more of building systems and building the satellite themselves. So there's I have a company called AfriOrbit, which is based in Nairobi, and let me pull up the I think if Timothy lowers the screen, I can be able to share mine. So AfriOrbit is African
Please
centered.
share. Please feel free to share.
Okay. One moment. So, and I'll highlight one program that we have been doing with Professor George Wiafe of Ghana and with Dr. Mensah of the AFCONSAT. And I think Dr. Mensah will be joining us if he has not joined yet. So with the University of Ghana, the Professor George Wiafe, who we have been working together on the Geo-African Incubator Accelerator. So this is in short called Gaia. And AfriOrbit, we have co-developed IoT, an IoT board that can be used for measuring, some parameters on the environment, particularly on the marine and coastal areas management or resource management. And so we started up on building and, an integrated, we have so from the AfriOrbit side, we provide an integrated satellite service because we aim to deploy a constellation of IoT satellites, which can hover not only on African landscape, but also, on the global context. But the key thing on these sensors, on these satellites, is to collect measurements from the ground using in situ measurement, in situ sensors on the ground. And Dr. Wiafe and I have been working on the first, moonshoot, which is the Edu space for this particular demonstration. Later on, we integrate satellite communication on operational basis. Other observation will come into play, and something very interesting, we are also building an equatorial spaceport off the coast of Kenya. So let me go into the Edu space, which is more of what we have been doing with Professor George Wiafe. The EduSpace program we are looking at, we have established an EduSpace, which is a 1 year CubeSat for educational purposes, and we call it the EduSat. And I think, I don't know if you can see perhaps if I lower this.
A little bit, yeah, a little bit.
Let me remove the background. No. I'll just, okay. So this is the 1 year CubeSat that we have been working with for educational purposes. So it has 3 main boards. It's a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter. It has an OBC, which is based on, we started off from a Raspberry Pi perspective, but the Raspberry Pi was a little bit powerful for the computation that are needed for this particular board. So we moved on to an Arduino, and then we came back to ESP32 as the main microcontroller. And the ESP32, I think, works best for us for this kind of form factor. So the OBC works with the EPS. We have an, electrical and power, subsystem, which supplies the energy or the power that is needed on the board and other subsystems. So for that, we use you can see the solar panels that are deployable on this side, and these solar panels feed into the battery system. So we have a small battery that has been packaged into the CubeSat. You cannot see it now because it's assembled already. And then we have a mission board. For this particular purpose, we are using this IoT, an IoT board on this, this kind of platform, and we use LoRa gateway or LoRa communication protocol for the IoT sensor. So what we did with Professor George Wiafe is to develop, the same protocol on the in situ sensors so that they can communicate with the CubeSat. So we are yet to demonstrate on the communication, but when we fly it on a drone, our purpose is actually we intend to fly this on either a drone or a balloon that is tethered, so that we can get it back on the ground. But the whole essence here is to demonstrate the capability of satellite IoT connectivity using LoRa communication protocol. And I think it has worked when we simulated with the ground sensor and with the laptop as the main ground. And now we are yet to demonstrate it on a high altitude, which will happen in the next month. I think we planned it for August. If it will go well, and from there, then we can develop a constellation and a full business plan for the full constellation that will come up. But we have gone further than that. Let me share my screen again. A second. So again, I missed that discussion that happened earlier, Dr. Claire, about the satellite IoT connectivity, but I think we can link up after that, after this meeting to see how we can, work together as a community. Yeah, so the EduSat that I just showed you has hands-on engineering. We have developed a full curriculum on it. So that means that students can build from start to end with all the three boards that I showed you, the OBC, which is a computing environment, and then we have the EPS from design to production. And you have the mission sensor, which in this case we are using an IoT sensor board, but you can put more missions on it, different other sensors that need to be taken care of when you're measuring your parameters. So in this particular purpose, we will be collecting, the IoT sensor board will be collecting information from in situ sensors that we are working with Gaia to, and push that into the cloud directly. Okay, so so we have also supported a consortium that won the UNOSA KiboCube satellite program. I wish Dr. Mensah was also here to expound on that. But what we did, we supported in terms of documentation, and the proposal went through, and we are helping to build one of the modules, which is the SDR for IoT communications and training. So we are working with Tanzania also to develop, to take advantage of our training on the EduSat before the full deployment. We have also supported rocketry programs. We have built a rocketry avionics board, which has been flying for. We have put it on board for I think 3 consecutive years on this summer rocketry program. We work with Morgan State University to do this. This is one of the deployments that you see here, which was like 2 years ago, and last year and the other year. This is the IoT board. This is the avionics board that we fly on the rocket, and then we collect as the rocket goes up to about a maximum of 2,000 feet. We collect those parameters again for the housekeeping, like altitude, the barometric altitude. We have temperature, we have pressure, and many other parameters that students then use for data analysis. And like I said, we are also developing, we are working to have our first spaceport, equatorial spaceport on the continent, which is in Kenya. And we have been working with Kenya Space Agency to establish this. We hope to get this done as soon as possible. I think by 2026, we are planning to have, laid the ground in terms of demarcation of where the spaceport is, which has already happened, but, we have to work with the local government and the Kenya Space Agency to ensure that this happens in a more coordinated way. Let me stop here, but the bottom line here is to say that we are in a business to develop a constellation of satellite IoT connectivity. It will involve about eventually about 100 small satellites, which can have a global coverage. And we are looking at deploying even more capabilities into that satellite, which includes the AI and other computational mechanism that will help us, synthesize and analyze data on the fly. This is some work that we are doing gradually. It will not happen overnight, but we are happy to work with partners to develop these. I don't have time to show you the video that we produced with the Gaia, the Gaia initiative, but during the discussion, we can elaborate more on this. Thank you, Dr. Claire.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mishak, for sharing. A lot has happened since we met during COVID. A lot of work has gone in. Aristides, do you have something to share?
Hello. Hello.
Hello, we're hearing you. Yeah, but we're not seeing you.
That's good. Perfect. Oh, you don't see me. Okay, let me just
Start your
put
video,
this
that be
on
helpful. Yes,
my
thank you.
video.
All
Yeah,
right.
because yeah, okay.
Yeah, there we go. All right, there you
I
go.
think now you can see me perfectly. So I think I'm going to do a presentation and my presentation is basically focused on the use of Earth observation tools, and I think I would like to show you with my presentation.
Yeah, please do that. Go ahead.
Okay. Uh, okay. Access. Okay. Do it. Okay. Here it is. So Windows. Okay, entire screen. Let me see this. Now you can see me. No, you cannot. Okay. Oof. Okay, meeting.
You have lost it.
I think I lost it. But let me just check
Well,
one
so
second
we've heard
again.
from Zimbabwe, we've heard from Zimbabwe, we've heard from Angola, we've heard from Mozambique. You're from Mozambique, and we heard from Kenya. So it's fantastic to have real Pan-African conversation on variety of perspectives and variety of countries. So it means that there's a broadening of people playing in this space, and we're excited about that. So go ahead. Your slides are up. We can see them now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so going straight to the presentation.
Okay, Mishak, we see that. Take care.
Yeah. So here I'm going to talk about how to explore or exploit technologies to 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 monitor emissions and of deforestation, and also for agriculture and land use purposes.
No,
Can you
just
see?
focus on health. This session is just about the health, so just do this session, just the one on, just on, just do this part on emissions. Because we're focusing on health in this sector, in this
Sorry?
session. In this session, we're focusing on education and health. So just
Yeah.
focus on the thing on emissions.
Okay, on emissions. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that the most important thing here is to show to you. Can you see the presentation?
No, it took down. It was up and then you turn it off. So share it again. It was being shared.
Okay,
Stop.
okay. Okay, okay, okay. Oh, okay. Now I know what happened. Oh no. Okay. Well, I think that the most important thing here is that we are in a process of adopting uh, Earth observation tools as part of our daily work. And what we are doing is creating teams of young professionals in producing data that show us how the progress of deforestation or land use is happening in Mozambique. We currently have, as I mentioned in the meeting yesterday, that we are basically now focused in generating information and share with different stakeholders in relation to agriculture and in relation to conservation. And we are currently trying to take this technology, this knowledge to community by using the existing tools and to make them to be able to manage their own resources. So we the basic experience we have mostly is on data generation, data acquisition, data generation, and processing, and reporting. So as I mentioned, we face challenges. One of the challenges we have is that we are currently depending on what on the technology from outside Africa. And now I could see in the three presentation a new movement where we have our Africa may have its own tools to manage their own resources. And this is something really big. And I was not expecting to see this at this meeting. And to me, it's very huge. And in Mozambique, we have a astrophysics department also, and we with some students with interest in exploring uh, technologies on space observations. But I think that the connection between the African entrepreneurs and institution is something that is really challenging. I would not imagine, for example, that Angola and Zimbabwe were showing books and manuals and uh, easy to access to kids that would allow us to learn faster about space. I think this meeting to me is a big lesson learned, and I'm looking forward to participate in the next year's meeting with my colleagues from other fields to make this connection to happen. And I'm glad that I had this opportunity, and I'm very excited to be part of this. So, with nothing more to share, thank you.
Thank you so much. If you could stop sharing your screen. This is really exciting news. If you could turn on back your cameras, Eldridge and Timothy. This is very exciting. I know that Mishak had to jump off, but when I consider that for myself, this all began with an event I had online when we were all trapped in COVID. And I recognized that there was a massive space thing taking place. And I'm like, oh my God, we got to do something. And so I just started moving around. And I met Mishak somewhere on the way, and we started working together. So this has been maybe since 2021 or thereabouts, right? And I just think, I think you're one of the first events we did. So, I mean, to see that you've come this far, that you have people, now invest in your vision, to me, is proof that if we just step out and get started, what you're saying also, Timothy, I tell stories. I'm a storyteller. So I'm an engineer, but also a storyteller. So first we must dream, I think somebody said, and then we must think. So here it is. Mozambique is looking for stuff. Eldridge has material. Meshach is building out a whole ecosystem. The small things that I'm doing here is to figure out how to do the stepping stone. So by doing analog research, which is what I'm doing in Africa, is trying to create communities of practice doing analog research for living in space. So it's the robotics, it's the AI, it's the solar systems, it's the waste management systems, water management systems, communication systems. And I believe that through frugal innovation, we're going to find those answers. So as I hear you, Eldred, saying you have a company, it's a Finnish company, but you're an Angolan living in Finland. I'm sure some of your business partners are African, some are from Europe, some are from all over the world. So it's a Finnish company that's also international in a sense. So as you think about this idea of where do we go from here in terms of now beginning to work with other startups, such as what Mishak is doing in Kenya, based on what he said, where are the opportunities for us to create, to build out? Because one of the ideas we've been talking about is a space world, and we're going to talk about that more tomorrow. And our design dojo will focus on that. We want to build like a metaverse site that will allow people like you to have a place there to share information that which you wish to have publicly shared, but also to be able to meet, because the distances are huge in Africa, and so are the transportation costs. And if we want to always be mindful of building a talent pipeline, so you can always have new ideas, we need to find a way to get the young people and the universities embedded. And so I'm focused on that space, the talent pipeline and the innovation ecosystems. Because what we talked about earlier, which you were there, Eldridge, on that call, we talked about the lack of an innovation ecosystem. So if you could kind of do a sidebar for me right now and talk about what did Finland have in terms of innovation ecosystem that you would like to see now that we can begin to try to embed in even maybe 2 or 3 schools across Africa to test and pilot, taking things from idea to practice, because that's a question that's come up time and time again, based on your experience coming from Angola and moving to Finland and doing it in Finland.
Yeah, I would say, and I would even use Timothy as an example. I met Timothy several years ago. He was still doing his PhD. He was building the first satellite from Zimbabwe alongside his colleagues. So what I can say is that in Africa right now, the situation is not the same as it was 5-10 years ago, where we lack talent in the space industry. And even now, what the initiatives that you are doing, the initiatives that people like Timothy is doing the outreach, getting into the villages, into the many different schools. I wish there was a study now for us to understand how many people in Africa have now a better understanding of space technology or are even able to develop space technology, because I think that this number has grown quite a lot, but we don't have that figure. Now, what Finland or in general the Western world does really well is financing, and I think this is the Achilles heel for us in Africa at the moment. We need to have more initiatives to fund projects. So that's the first thing. If you come to Europe, for example, you have ESA. ESA has, I was just in a discussion with people from ESA a couple of weeks ago. They have over 20 programs where if you are a startup, you can apply and get some grants to kick off your startup, because space companies are very hard. They require a lot of money. Even if you're on the downstream, if you are building a Earth observation application, you still need to hire talent. You need to do a lot of business development. You need to do a lot of traveling. So you do need money to kick off. Although you have the skills, you have the talent, but you need the money to kick off. And I would say that this is what we lack in Africa. I hope now that with the African Space Agency, we can now start taking some of the best practices that we can see in Europe, we can see in Asia, we can see in America, where we have public grants for space companies to help them to start taking the first steps. That's very, very, very important. And then on the second side is, together with the authorities, we need to also develop our private financing ecosystem. So if I, as an African entrepreneur, let's say from Mozambique, from Angola, if I go to a bank, how easy it is for a bank to give me a loan of, let's say, 50,000 euros for me to start my space company. That might be a little bit difficult. So we also need to change this mindset, which is something that in the Western world is already quite easy. And even in the United States, it's even more dynamic, because the venture capitalist mentality there is on a whole different level. You have this whole ecosystem built on financing. You have an idea, you have a team, you can present the value proposition, and then you sort of present this in many different places and you're able to get the funding. So I think this is where we have to start focusing now in Africa, because I think that we don't lack anymore the brains to take things forward. I'm sure that if you give Timothy or Mshak, let's say 5 million euros today to build satellites, they can do it. It's not a question that they cannot or they have to learn something. We now need to start focusing on investments and how to get grants for entrepreneurs.
Well, you know, I'm saying, I'm so glad that Timothy talks about storytelling, because one of the things I would like to see us do successfully is, and maybe we can go to the Afri-Exim Bank with this, because they're at least built to do development. First of all, do a project, do some kind of a conversation where we focus on educating the Afri-Exim Bank about the space sector, right? I'm sure between Meshach and Dr. Lowell, who was just here talking about them, we could probably make the case for having a conversation, not necessarily a public one, but something we can do. How do we educate them about this sector, number one? Number two, I have seen too many Forbes billionaires in Africa books of lists, and I'm saying, like, well, what are these guys doing? You know, like, are these women too? What are they doing? Why are they not even putting, because they're benefiting from space. They are because they're in industries like banking, etc., which are benefiting from space. So how can we also use the power of storytelling to perhaps begin to get their imagination to go beyond what they know, because they might be scared to look foolish and that they don't know. And so how can we use a story form to get them to feel comfortable? I mean, $10 million is not going to kill them. You know what I mean? So if you have 10 of them putting up 10 million, you have 100 million. So the floor is yours. Tell us, Timothy, because I am ready to do the movie. Let's get started.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I think of course, I did not like really maybe give you a brief background about the characters in that book for storytelling, because one of the things that I put the setting in the raw area, like I said, is to make sure that people appreciate that space is not far away from the raw area. That is one thing. Then another thing is that I'm trying also to bridge the barrier that us as engineers, right? We've got the knowledge, but we also need to share the knowledge, because I believe that we need to tell our own stories as Africans, because those stories, they resonate much better to our people. So one of the most important thing is that for them to understand more about space, we need to now try to have this kind of storytelling, such that it captures them in the areas, in the setting that they already know. Because if you put the setting that they already know, it captures their interest. Then you teach them the aspects of space. Like in this case, in each and every story that I bring up, they discuss about the different aspects of space, and also the skills that are required, and also what you need to do. So you find in that book, there's a grandmother that is also there. So the grandmother is talking about the traditional aspect, or like, for example, in astronomy, right? They go and they watch the skies, and they come back in the night. They share about the grandmother. Then the grandmother is also sharing about them, how they use the moon to even to farm and some other things. So it's trying to make that space is not far away from what already exists. We need now to kind of like break that barrier, and also try to put the issue of futurism, because you find that long back, most of the fiction movies, new technologies about space, people would see them in the fiction movies, right? They now, right now, it's now a reality. So we also need to try to bring that kind of innovation. Now, as African, we now need to project into the future using storytelling, right? In our own setting, then we are now projecting our future, where we want things to go in terms of technology. Then we need to realize that. But in terms of storytelling, so I still feel this is another aspect which I want to contribute much, in as much, of course, I do the building of the satellites, of course,
Well, I
professionally.
definitely loved it. I definitely loved
But
it.
I'm capturing that part. So hopefully in October, then the book will
Yes.
be off. Yeah, but you can have a privilege, of course, of seeing the book before other people. Yeah, but it's almost done.
Yes, yes, yes. It's very important. I think sort of, I mean, I'm definitely interested on that part of it, because I think we need, I mean, a lot of people get introduced to space and space ideas first through storytelling. And so I'm going to have a conversation with you after this. I write stories, I write plays, I have a treatment in my head. And guess what? There's actually a film competition that I think we only have 10 days, but we probably could do something in 10 days. Put your mind to it. So let's try and
Okay,
enter
sure.
that film competition. I'll be in touch with you to see if we can just spend 24 hours, 48 hours drafting the treatment, submit it. Hey, what's to lose, right? They're giving some funds to develop a grant. Let's do a movie about these guys here. It has to be a fun movie. It has to be something that is a story fiction, but build their backstories into the movie such that we actually help awaken the minds of the millionaires and the multimillionaires and the billionaires in Africa to fund people like them who are actually doing the work. So Misha, you didn't get a chance to finish some of the things you're doing. So maybe you want to just finish up now. We have about maybe 5 or so minutes. We started half an hour late. So we're going to go past, 3 o'clock. So we started at 2:30. So let's just wrap up.
Oh, yeah, I think, Dr. Claire, I benefited from the wisdom of, the previous speakers, and I think I had done with my presentation. So the main thing here is, as Edrich says, and Timothy emphasizes on that, is how to bridge that gap and, how to unlock the funding. We all have bankable projects, but it has been a pain to commercialize or even get the kick funding to allow us, develop our solutions. And the ecosystem is not so ready yet to give the seeding that is required, like, seed capital, that even though you have a bankable project, going to a bank like African Development Bank, which is essentially supposed to be a development bank, but they still don't consider space as one of the key pillars.
It's interesting because in 2023, when we did the first conference in Kenya, and I asked that question, why is it they're willing to fund tech companies, but they're not willing to fund engineering companies? And that's another conversation we have to have. So I think our homework from this particular session is to come up with a strategy so that between now and next year, we don't come back with the same conversation. Between now and next year, we must have an action plan and a blueprint that says, okay, we have to form either an industry association or industry alliance with an association, or even a working group, but something where it's not just Mishak alone going, or Eldrick alone going, or Timothy going. If like 12 of us go, they have bankable projects, especially an Eldridge who can say, well, I'm this in Finland, but the reason why I couldn't do it here is because you guys are not doing XYZ. Now we have some practical approach because most of the people, they are not scientists. They have to see it to believe it. So we have to tell the story in a different way. And I think part of which we can rehearse is using programs like this to begin to rehearse what might we design, what kind of gathering might we design differently, or what kind of protocol might we set forward that we can find an existing space and create an opportunity to give them room. Or we go to them and say, hey, we want to come and do something in your institution about the next big thing in Africa. And I think now that we have an Africa Space Agency, it has changed everything. So I do, and now that we also have a different climate in the US with NASA being privatized, a lot of elements of NASA being privatized, we also have a new operating ecosystem. So I think maybe 5 years ago, they wouldn't be willing to listen. They might be more willing to listen now because the evidence that the donor space is changing by USAID closing down, for example, has demonstrated Africa has to do something different.
Yeah, and to put the solutions ahead of the technology, because I think, well, these banks are also not, I think they are risk averse, so to say, but they tend to invest more on low risk projects, even though they are tied. But the main problem comes because they are tied to the multilateral kind of funding, which is more governmental. And when a private company or private entity, unless it's backed by the government, the funding doesn't come easily. But like you said, there are some grants which can be taken advantage of. I see that their concern is when we project, that this is a space company or a space technology. But in essence, I think we should be projecting the solutions that we are trying to resolve, and not necessarily disclosing the means, which is the space technology, on the engineering, which is vertical. if we go to them and tell them, hey, what a sanitation issue, we can solve this with this budget, and without telling them how we will do it, because the means remain our IP. But then being able to resolve the pain point, the main I think the thing that always brings the bottleneck is that you then have to go through the government for you to get the funding or to get the backing of the government to do the project. It's a collateral kind of arrangement.
Right. And as we heard from Ernest, they learned the hard way that they would not trust that they could do the work. They rather gave the contract to somebody else, which means we have work to do. So any closing remarks let me start with you, Timothy. Any closing remarks?
No, I'd like to say that maybe, of course, maybe we need also maybe to look at the aspects on how artificial intelligence also can also be incorporated in our education system. Because when you look, I think just recently we had an African conference in Kigali, in which there were so many resolutions or recommendations about artificial intelligence. I think in my presentation that I sent, I think I also captured some of those things. So we need to look into how artificial intelligence also can also be factored into the education system. And also the issue of skills is also very much important. I think nations, they need to do some skills audits in terms of issues to do with space. I think I agree with Edrich when he mentioned about the issue that we also need to have that skills audit in terms of space, and also how best we know we've got a deficit in terms of human capacity, but now we've got different skills in different nations. Let's say maybe I'm from Zimbabwe, I've got this skill, Meshach has got this skill, Edris has got the skill of entrepreneurship. Like, we've got a diverse of skills, but now we need to find a way how can we work together in collaborating, right? Me in storytelling, this one doing this. And because for us to build a capacity that will say will satisfy Africa will take a long time. But the only thing is now to try to have I don't know whether it's a curriculum, if it is universities, whether they've got programs where these human resources will be rotating, providing the capacity, whether remotely or maybe they go there. But that's the only way we are going to develop. Because of course, there's the issue of brain drain that will also be facing also in Africa with the little human capacity that we have. But there's a need for people to work together. Otherwise, it will take a long time for us to really move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Eldridge, your closing remarks?
Yeah, I don't want to be too repetitive, but I just want to stress out on Timothy's point is that and then just as an example, I've been working with Meshach also on many different projects, many different ideas, and this is what we can also do is find people in different countries that we can see how we can aggregate some value and different skill sets, and then we can actually build something big. So this is my closing remark. I think collaboration is critical for us in Africa.
Meshach, the final word goes to you.
Exactly the same one, collaboration. I think we have been working with Edrich, like he says. We are exploring ways in which his assured navigation positioning service can also fit into what we are doing, and we are scheduling a meeting to discuss this further. So collaboration, because going alone might be a long journey, but then when we work together, we get there faster, and we have more strength and more reputation when we are working together than in more small piecemeal of technologies. So I think collaboration, but also more outreach. I think sort of marketing. We are sometimes shy about our technologies and what we can do, but I've seen that Africans do a lot, to be honest, in different ways, but they think it's small and they don't talk about it. And this is the kind of barrier that we also have to break on how to build our confidence and speak big picture instead of just remaining small.
Thank you so much. On Thursday, actually, this idea of a metaverse is really what I'm calling a space futures collaboratory. So definitely, I'd love to have your take on it, Timothy, even if you can't drop by virtually, just some ideas, some notes of what this thing could look like. What would some of the problems be? Because we want to have some young minds to think about it. Maybe they come up with something that I haven't thought about, because it's very, very early in the design phases. But I do think having a collaboratory where we can go and have a sandbox for simulation modeling, for gaming through some of the challenges, etc., would be one way to get started. And I know that a lot of people don't do gaming in Africa in terms of designing gaming, but there are enough open source software that with a few classes we'll be able to get a batch of. In fact, we have some students here. Perhaps we can convince them that they ought to start this as their project, to design a gaming space that we can actually begin to work together. So thank you so much, Timothy, Eldridge, Meshach, and Aristides for joining us. We have come to the end of this fabulous session, and we go to our last session, second to last session for the afternoon, and our speaker is here. So we are going to bring him on. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.